So this sounds really terrible, but it's not a graphic novel, and that the violence and the massacres and the rapes that occurred, it's not done in a very
no, but the research of it.
Yes,
the research.
Yeah, it was.
This really happened to these people.
It did, and I think, like you said, we're all very familiar with the villain, you know, Hieronymus, and we're also really familiar with the hero, with the Hades, and you know, all of the men in the story. And I think it was important for me to write about the women. As far as it is a really dark story, and a lot of really dark things happen. I think I could never have written about it. I think it's one thing to read, but I don't think I could ever have written about that. And I did make something happen to Saskia that kind of allowed her to not go through all of that violence. I can't say more because that would be a spoiler. So I did make certain decisions to kind of make sure that all of that terrible violence against the women was kind of sheltered from the reader.
You know, so this is more now as an individual person, right? The one thing that I kept thinking of constantly is generational trauma, which is basically how these people, when they survived and came out of it, then they ended up with all that trauma, and then the generation through, because they didn't actually talk about it. Do you know what I mean? So how do you feel they survived afterwards? I know that, like, you know what I mean? The thing that I know that there was, the characters were happy in that end, you know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, I feel, and I struggle sometimes on, how did these people survive going back to a normal life in the 16th, 17th century?
I think much the same as we would, and I think that's the key to remember, is that it's really easy to look back at history and kind of think, oh, they were different, you know. It's like looking at a black and white photo, and then with AI today, you know, you can colorize it. All of a sudden you see it differently, and they straight away look so real, because when you look at things in black and white from olden days, it just looks like different. The people look different. So I think we need to remember that these people were just like us, and we would have reacted in a very similar way. And I think one thing that proves that is the letter from Reverend Bastian's, and we still have that letter today, and it's been translated so we can read it in English. But he's basically writing it not long after they finally get back to Batavia, after all Jakarta as we know it today, after all these months. And he's lost his wife, and he's lost his 6 children, and they're all brutally murdered, and all he's got is his oldest daughter who survived. And he writes how he's writing to his family back in Holland, and just saying, I'm finding it really hard to find the words to talk about everything that's happened, but I have to do it quickly because the boat is about to take the letter. And I don't have much time before, you know, I have to write this letter quickly, basically. So yeah, and that was a really beautiful little human detail to sort of realise, how would you find the words to say, look, since I last saw you, our ship sank, there was a mutiny, there was murders, my whole family's gone, and here I am on my own. And also, I'm being persecuted because I signed this document that basically made me an allegiance to a murder.
Well, you had to do it. Either that or die. There was no choice.
No. So there are some reactions that I think we look at through modern eyes and go, that's terrible. You know, how the church council in Jakarta, Batavia, the colony, you know, they basically interrogated him and then shipped him off to another part of Indonesia where he died, because he was a heretic, because he signed that oath of allegiance. You know, there was no compassion, sort of no real understanding of, well, I guess you had to do what you had to do, and you poor man, you just lost your whole world.
Your whole family,
And so, some things I think are very unrelatable now.
It is, and I
mean, life is different, so you didn't probably have the luxury of sitting around and reflecting on your trauma. Life was just harder, you know.
Good point.
Life was
busy
simpler. Your life was simpler. You didn't have luxury of, you know, leisure time, and you didn't live very long. You know, if you got to 50 or 60, you were an old person. So I think just life in general was different, and you didn't, not wallow, but probably you just you just got on with it. And attitudes to life were different. Life was just harder, I think. And yeah.
It's very true, because the more that you focus on a busy person doesn't tend to have, yeah, that's actually a really good point. Yes, please.
It's probably no different than the way we deal with grief. Grief will never leave you. It always comes back. So that sort of trauma will always be with them, but you just have to learn to keep going.
You do, and what I think is interesting, what we're understanding now, is generational trauma. Whereas they might not have ever mentioned they were on the island, or talked about it, much like those in World War II didn't talk about it, but how they were closed off, unemotional, not connecting, or shut down, brings into the next few generations as well. So which is such an interesting thing from a historical point. I found it very interesting that we never ever mention about Edith Cohen's father being hung, and you just didn't speak about it. As I said, most people tend to talk about all the men in this. I think you gave the women a voice. Is that important for you to have the voice of the women? I think this is the first time it's really been about the women.
Yeah, I think it really was, and it's not like I'm not some great feminist figure or anything like that, but I just think me as a woman, that's naturally what I'm interested in, and I think a lot of other women are too. And a story like Batavia, is I think an interesting one to hear it from a woman's perspective, because there's so much really fluky stuff about the story, So I think it is interesting to see it how women would have experienced it.
What I found very...
The book, The Courageous Diary, and that's a fiction as well, by Harvey Gray.
Yes.
So there is writing about, and we have a couple of, in the Netherlands, diaries of women of the VOC. So
Women of the...
VOC.
Right, okay, sorry, yes. So, Ella, no.
Yes.
It is right. Ella is part of the Netherlands Museum. She sits on the chairs of and the committees of quite a number of history museums in Perth. Very knowledgeable lady, especially about the Dutch history. Yeah.
But can I just say too, and I didn't read Lucretia's diary on purpose, because I didn't want to be influenced by his Lucretia. I think that's why also I chose a fictional character. Maybe that was a bit of a safe decision too, because I was new, so it seemed quite scary to write from Lucretia's point of view. But I think writing from a fictional character is interesting because they're completely made up, and there's no sort of prior knowledge about them that you could read in a book. And I think that's maybe a bit more relatable.
Yeah.
Because they're completely own person.
Well, who has questions, comments, or conversations?
I do. I don't mind opening. So I just wanted to make a comment. I listened to the book on Audible, and I don't know if you had any influence over it, but I really loved the fact that there were 3 different actual voices.
Yes.
And one of the things that can really impact you when you're listening to Audible is a woman trying to be a man or a man trying to be a woman. So
yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for the feedback.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I got to pick Tess's voice, just a selection, but the other 2 were just, that was it. And I was very happy with them, especially Aris's. We didn't even talk about Aris.
No.
Go.
So I have one more question.
Yes, you
the talisman or the piece of jewellery, where did it come from, and was that actually part of the archaeological digs?
No, so that's purely fiction. Okay. I mean, it could happen.
Piece of jewellery that transfers down.
Yeah, so the pendant is the kind of the symbol and the thing that connects all the narrations. Yes. So that was, it had different versions. At first there were a pair of an earring, so they had different kind of variations, but it was always the same thing, this pendant that got passed down and ended up with Tess, and she solves the mystery of who owned it, where it came from.
All right, look, we'll tell you, it was her sister's mother's auntie's cousin.
So who was the name? Was Stef?
Oh, Aris. So I've completely forgotten Aris. So he's the 3rd narrator in the book, and he is a true character. He was the undersurgeon on the ship. So there were 2 surgeons, the master surgeon France, and Aris was the undersurgeon. And sadly, his master France didn't make it. Aris did, and his kind of narration ties it together too, because it was through his story that we could see a lot of the things that were happening on the ship. Whereas Saskia was 17 years old, she was a young woman, she wouldn't have been able to go all throughout the ship and learn things, but Aris lets us meet the captain and the commander and even Geronimo's and a few others. So his narrative I loved writing, actually. Probably the best in the end, because it came last. It was quite a late edition.
So he survived.
He did survive, yes. We don't know what happened to him, but I kind of gave him an ending that I like to think he actually got, but we don't know.
How many of you know, and I see you there,